Välkomna till Semänniskan-scenen, Svenska kyrkans scen här på Bokmässan. Följande samtal kommer att ske på engelska, så att alla vet om det. The new book by David Sedaris is called Calypso. Here he is, our guest. You're most welcome. And he will be talking to Camilla Lif, priest from Stockholm. Varsågod.
Ursäkta, har du barn?
Jag har barn. Jag har ett barn. Hon sitter där. Ja. Har du pengar?
Jag har inga svenska pengar.
Inga svenska pengar?
Actually, I have almost $100, but nobody wants it.
No.
You can't spend money here.
No, it's impossible.
And when you go, I went to a store and I pulled out my wallet and I pulled out money and the woman was like, her mood darkened. And I said, did your mood just darken because I have money? And she said, yes.
Yes.
And she just wanted me to use a card.
Yeah, I know. That's the way it goes.
And I'm sorry, before we get started, I just question. How do people address you? When people...
They address me as my first name.
Really? But are you a reverend?
I don't know what you call me in English. I think I'm a minister.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Okay, I guess a minister, let's say you would, I didn't go to that kind of a church. I mean, I went to the Greek church, and so it was Father Arsenault.
Yes.
But one thing that
you can call me mother.
Do people?
You can call me mother.
Is mommy okay?
Okay, mommy's okay. I would like to talk about your book.
Sure.
This lovely book contains 21 short stories about people you've met, about getting older, about your family, and about death. And the first story begins with this. This is a quote from your book. There are few real joys to middle age. The only perk I can see is that with luck you'll acquire a guest room. And I'm very interested in the craft of writing. I always like to see what it looks like where people write. Do you write in your guest room like many people do, or do you write some other place? What does a working day look for you?
If I wrote in my guest room, it wouldn't be a guest room. I have no, I have an office, and I get dressed up every morning, and I go straight to my desk. I mean, I get dressed up, my idea of dressed up, like I've got a lot of clothes that I only wear indoors.
The soft ones.
No, they're like culottes, you know. They're like I have a dress shirt that goes to my ankles. I mean, it just looks like you took a dress shirt and stretched it. I mean, I think I look great, you know, but I get dressed up and I put some thought into it. My eyes open and I think, what am I going to wear to my office? And I get dressed up and I go to my office.
With coffee?
Yes, with coffee.
What time in the morning?
I like to wake up early at around 10 o'clock. But I go to bed like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, really?
So I get up at 10.
And then you work till?
I work until like 1:30, and then I go and I pick up rubbish on the side of the road for 8 hours, and then I come home and I go back to work.
I want to return to this garbage picking later, but yeah, it's a very special thing you do. I have a very strong bond to my 2 sisters and my mother and my father who died last year. And when I read your book, I thought that my father was quite similar to your father, actually. And to be an adult and still have these close-knit relations to family, why did you want to write about this? Because this book is very much about your family.
I'm Greek-American, right? But one thing I like about Greeks, like when you go to Greece, or when you meet Greeks, there are a lot of Greeks in Australia, and when I meet Greeks in America, it's a matter of minutes before a Greek person says, my mother, my father, my brother, or my sister. And you can meet other people, and they can go months without mentioning their family. And I don't know, it was always a primary relationship to me. I think I grew up, there were 6 children in my family, and so we didn't really need anybody else. Like, I knew some people, but it wasn't that important to me, and it's never been that important to me to have friends, because I have my brothers and sisters. And my father is still alive, but I think this is a relatively new phenomenon because we're living longer. My father is 96 years old. And I have, I guess you could call it a troubled relationship with him. And it used to be that your father, you would be 40 and your father would die, and then you're just free. But now, like, I'm 62, and it's like, oh my God, you're still around? Like, I mean, my father called my older sister, and she drives 2 hours to take him to all his doctor's appointments. And he called her at home and told her she was a loser, and she's wasted her life, and she's never done anything, she's never going to do anything. And then she called me and said, you know what Dad just said to me? That should have ended 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And so, but I think when it continues into your adulthood, you become twisted and deformed in a way, because, I mean, if you have a loving relationship with your parent, that's just beautiful, and you just, the longer you can sustain it, the more beautiful it is. But if it's tortured, then I think you become like a twisted up tree. And so I'm a twisted up tree.
Okay, so yeah, I understand.
But I'm a twisted up tree with an office. So
and a guest room, or 2.
And a guest room. But so I write about it, so I have an outlet. I don't know what, like my older sister has no outlet. She just has to take it.
Yeah.
Whereas I turn around and write about it, and then people say, that's awful what you write about your father. And I think, I'll deal with it however I want. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'd rather write about it and get people to laugh about it than internalize it and poison myself with it.
What does your father think?
What does my father think?
Does he read your books?
No. I mean, my father, he's not a reader,
Okay.
But like I write for the New Yorker magazine, and my father will call me and say, I got this gal on the street, and her daughter wrote something, and she's 20, and I told her you'd get it in the New Yorker. And I say, Dad, nobody's in the New Yorker when they're 20. Like, well, you're in there. So,
So there are many things that's in this book that sort of tie you to the ground. There's your family and some physical challenges as you grow older. I know them too. And the fact that you spend a considerable amount of time picking up garbage in West Sussex, where you live. Can you tell us how come you practice this kind of sanitary work? Because it's quite extreme.
well, where I live in England, it's in the country in West Sussex, and so it's beautiful. I mean, it's stunning, and I live in a hamlet of 7 houses outside of a village of 27 houses, and the houses have thatched roofs, and there's a 12th century church, and it's insane. It looks like a movie set. But people throw everything out the car window. They throw the newspaper out the window. They throw, they go to McDonald's, they throw everything out the window. They throw bottles and cans out the window. And it just drives me crazy. So I just pick it up. And I picked up tons and tons and tons. And every day I pick up more. And I bring a bag and I have a grabber. And I just think of it as my job.
Are you angry when you're doing this?
No, I don't want to be angry, so I don't think about the people who do it. I listen to audiobooks or podcasts. I'm just in my own little world. But I went to we had a little fair, in the village last month, and this woman came up, and she told me about another woman who had seen me, and she said, oh, he's mentally challenged. And she said, I see this poor mentally challenged man. talking to himself and picking up rubbish, and I just pray no one takes advantage of him. And that's
She prays for you.
yeah, she prays for me.
And you even got the truck with your name. I mean, this garbage truck with your name on.
They named a garbage truck after me, and then I got invited to Buckingham Palace, but just because of all the rubbish I've picked up. It didn't have anything to do with my books or anything. It was just because of picking up rubbish.
An applaud for picking up rubbish.
Well, it's not, it's that I have the same kind of disorder that allows me to write every single day at the exact same time, allows me to go and pick up garbage every single day at the exact same time. So it's like a obsessive compulsive thing, but when I was young, it would torment me. But then I learned to harness it for the good.
Yeah.
So I'm not a, people say, oh, you're so disciplined. No, it's not discipline. It's an obsessive.
Yeah.
It's an obsession. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any more? Writing at exactly the same time, picking up garbage.
They change. They come along. You know. And there are things that I don't expect, like the picking up garbage. It was feeding spiders at one point.
Feeding spiders.
But it's the same thing, like the sense of losing control and something else taking over. And I would have to catch the flies. And then I had, like, I don't know, 30 spiders that I was feeding and taking care of and monitoring. And I had charts about all of them. But that'll just break your heart. Because, you know, I had, like, her name was Paula, the spider. And she built a web at the door so I could never open or close the door. So I had to go in another way because I didn't want to disturb her. Mm-hmm. And then I come in one day and another spider's eating her. And I was devastated, you know. So they're a hard thing to get. You can't give your heart to a spider. That's what
I want to embroider this on some kind of, yeah. In America, or Christians have this slogan, "What would Jesus do?" I got this band from a bookstore across the street. And after reading this book, because you're so observant, you see how people behave and what's curious about human behavior. And I started to think, what would David Sedaris see or say or write rather than what would Jesus do? So you have this kind of special way of looking at human behavior. And how did this Sedarian way of seeing come about? All this sarcasm, the melancholy, the witty intelligence. Why you and how?
I mean, you know how, like, sometimes you walk into a room and you think somebody in this room is missing a finger. Like you just know it.
You do?
And yeah, the same way as sometimes you walk into a room and you think there's a celebrity in this room. And you just know there is one. And you look around and it's like, oh, there's Gwyneth Paltrow. But I don't know, like the missing finger, my family's like that. I mean, you know, you go somewhere with my family and they would, I mean, everybody in my family has an eye for something else, right? For some detail, whether it's a way that someone speaks or whether it's a physical thing. I don't know why. We're just kind of in tune with it. But now I feel like you get credit for being observant and all you did was not have a phone, you know? I mean, Hugh and I, my boyfriend and I, we left New York City in 1998, but we just got an apartment there again, right? We're not going to live there all the time, but just a few months a year. And it's on the Upper East Side. And people say, oh my God, I could never live on the Upper East Side. Like, I need more diversity. But this is everyone in New York. They're walking down the sidewalk and they're going like that, and no one's looking at you or talking with you, so what does it matter? What color the person is who's not paying you any attention. But nobody's paying attention to anything anymore. To anything. Everybody is locked down. And I feel like, I mean, often I look up or I'll be in the airport and I'm looking around and I'm the only person I see. If I were a thief, I'd have it made right now because everybody's wrapped up in their little device. And I have a telephone, but every time I turn my phone on, it's dead because, like, my phone last week, it told me that I had 3 minutes of screen time, that I'd used it for 3 minutes. And I thought, oh, my goal's to cut that in half, you know what I mean, and use it for 1.5 minutes next week. Because the less time I spend like that, I don't know, the whole world is in front of you. I don't care about that or those people or Twitter or I don't.
Does it make you feel lonely?
Does it make me feel lonely? No, no one in my family's into that.
No.
None of us, you know.
Okay.
None of us care about it. So I've always got them.
You've always got them.
But I don't know. I mean, does that even count? Oh, someone texted me. What does that count at? I mean, I guess, oh, someone thought about me, I guess. I don't. You know what I think it is? I think, this is going to sound bad.
Go ahead.
I think when you've sold 12 million books, you know people are thinking about you, so you don't need you don't need evidence on your phone every few minutes.
Okay, so we have to sell 12 million books and get rid of the phone. That's a good tip. I want to ask you a question. I grew up in an atheistic family, strictly atheistic family, and now I sit here in this collar. Do you believe in God?
I grew up in the Greek Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
And at the time that I grew up, the whole service was in Greek. And my father's Greek, my mother was not, so we didn't speak it at home, right? So I only knew, like, I don't know, 12 words of Greek. And so the Greek Orthodox is stand up, sit down, and then eventually pass out because it's a lot of fasting. And so you haven't eaten in days, and then they come through with this incense, and then you just drop, you know. So I never got the idea of a punishing God, just a really boring one.
A really boring God, yeah.
But and then we moved to the South, where everybody I went to school with was Baptist, and that's hell, hell, you're going to hell, 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 hell. So and we went to church until we were 16, and then we got to make up our mind whether we wanted to go to church or not. And then, of course, we said no, because you have a choice of sleeping in on Sunday or going to church on Sunday. We said no. So I guess I don't, I don't think about God unless I think my plane's going to go down. Then I'm like, God's my best friend. But I think I'm like a lot of people that way. I don't give him any thought or her any thought until I'm in trouble.
But it's like church and God are the same thing for you then.
That's interesting. I guess you're right. I thought of church and God as the same thing, and so then I stopped going to church, and so I stopped going to God, I suppose. But it's hard to separate. Okay, like if you were my neighbor,
yeah,
right? You'd probably like, oh no, it's him again, because I'd probably come over to your house a lot because I don't know, I like you. But where I grew up, it was more of a like in the South at that time, it wasn't welcome. You know what I mean? You always felt like if people knew who I really was, like if they knew that I was gay, they would hate me, you know?
We would love you.
Well, you're Swedish.
I'm Swedish, and you're almost Swedish too. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I
thank
wish
you
I
so
could
much.
talk to you for hours. And you're welcome to the Church of Sweden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun.